They called it the darkest storm the frontier had seen in years, a ferocious sweep of thunder and lightning that rattled window panes, flooded horse corrals, and made the moon vanish behind swirling clouds. Against that tumultuous sky, a lone ranch house stood perched on the edge of a wide, desolate prairie. Once, that ranch had flourished beneath the warm sun, its barns filled with hay, its porch alive with laughter. But now, the windows were all shuttered in gloom, the fences rotted, the horses sold off. Hope had drained from that place, leaving behind a silent sadness that seemed to cling to its creaking boards. Kate McAllister, a young mother barely 22 years old, lay trembling in the suffocating darkness of a cellar, hugging her infant daughter Lily close to her chest. She felt the cold stone walls press in on her. The foul smell of decay and mold thickened the air, and the single flickering lantern above offered no warmth. It only emphasized the shadows that danced ominously across the dirt floor. She had been brought here against her will, imprisoned by the very people who were supposed to have taken care of her after her husband's death, her in-laws, Douglas and Maud McAllister. Once upon a time, she had believed they had hearts, had empathy, had the capacity to show mercy to their own kin. But with her husband James gone killed in a sudden accident in the wilderness, something dark and vengeful had taken root in their souls. Kate was powerless, left with no ally, no friend, and no money to her name. She had only Lily, whose soft cries served as a desperate call for comfort in that unrelenting gloom. Day upon day, hour upon hour, the place warped her sense of time. Kate fought to stay strong, though her body grew weaker. She tried to soothe Lily whenever her little one whimpered. She could sense the baby's hunger gnawing at her heart. Occasionally, either Douglas or Maud would unlatch the iron door to toss some moldy crust of bread in, or a cup of brackish water barely enough to survive on. But they made sure the chain around the handle was tight, made sure Kate stayed buried alive in that tomb with her infant. It had all begun the week her husband died. James McAllister had been a gentle soul with a love for the open range and a sense of pride in building a life for his small family. He and Kate had dreamed of starting anew, leaving behind the bitterness that simmered in his parents' household, for reasons Kate never truly understood. Douglas and Maud had always held her in contempt. They disliked her parentage. Her father was rumored to have Spanish heritage, and her mother had come from a family of farmers instead of wealthy ranchers. The older couple scorned the idea of their son mixing bloodlines with someone they deemed beneath them, though James never bowed to that prejudice. When James perished in a tragic flash flood, Kate's world collapsed. She had nowhere else to go, no money to travel, and no relatives who could shelter her. Hoping to at least find a roof for Lily, she turned back to the McAllister ranch. That decision sealed her fate. Soon enough, the cruel in-laws laid out their plan. They wanted James's portion of the ranch, and they wanted Kate and Lily out of sight forever. Instead of turning her away, perhaps worried about local lawmen who might step in on behalf of a grieving widow, they locked her up. Kate refused to give up, even in the claustrophobic dark. She would hum lullabies to Lily, cradle her baby against the threadbare coat that served as a blanket, and dream of a day when they would ride away to freedom. She prayed for some break in the storm, but every time she heard footsteps overhead, she tensed with fear, uncertain if someone would come down and harm them further. The nights were the worst. She heard the creak of floorboards, the distant cackle of Maud's voice, and Lily's soft whimpers echoing off the walls. Days wore on, turning into weeks. Kate's cheeks hollowed, her spirit, which had once been bright, now flickered like the lantern overhead. But still, she held Lily tight. She refused to let her child sense defeat. Though her body felt frail, her love burned strongly, a mother's love, refusing to die even in the blackest pit. Late one evening, as a torrential downpour raged outside, Kate's heart clenched with raw terror. Lily had not cried for hours. The baby just lay against her, breathing shallowly, with trembling hands. Kate tried to coax Lily to feed, but the child barely stirred. Panic gripped Kate's chest. She pleaded for help in whispers for a miracle. Anything to save her baby. Above ground, thunder boomed, rattling the old ranch house. Maud's shrill laughter carried down through the cracks in the floorboards. Douglas barked an order, telling someone or something to hush. It sounded as though they had visitors. Kate heard footsteps, several pairs crossing the floor. She couldn't make out the conversation. She only heard the rise and fall of heated voices, the clatter of a chair thrown or knocked over, then abrupt silence. Suddenly, there was a tremendous crash. Wood splintered. A cry tore the stillness. Another crash reverberated through the house. The thunder outside seemed to answer in kind, shaking the very foundation. Kate's pulse quickened, and she clutched Lily closer. More shouts echoed overhead, fearful, desperate. She heard scuffling, a muffled shriek, and the sounds of a fight. Her mind raced. Had some bandits come to rob the place? Or had a posse from town finally discovered her captivity? She didn't dare to hope. She hovered by the cellar's locked door, her heart hammering. If someone was battling the McAllisters, perhaps it was a chance for escape. If only she could figure out how to unchain that lock from the inside. She heard a roar, a voice full of fury. Then came the report of a revolver. Once, twice, another crash. The storm's thunder rumbled over everything, until Kate could barely discern one sound from the next. And then, with a deafening crack, the cellar door above her exploded inwards. Shards of wood tumbling down the steps in a rain of splinters and dust. Kate flinched, shielding Lily's face. Her heart hammered like a frightened deer. She stared wide-eyed at the silhouette in the open doorway. Lightning flashed behind that figure, illuminating muscular arms, long raven black hair, and a stance that radiated a fierce, determined energy. For a heartbeat, Kate could not process who stood before her. Was it friend? Foe? He stepped forward, slow and steady, his eyes piercing the gloom. The lantern's light flickered across his bronzed features, revealing high cheekbones, a strong jaw, and an intensity that nearly took Kate's breath away. He wore deerskin leggings, moccasins caked with mud, and a fringed shirt that carried the dust of a long ride. Strapped across his back was a hand-carved bow. At his hip lay a tomahawk. Across his chest were turquoise beads and a string of animal teeth. Despite the hints of violence that clung to him, his gaze held no malice. Instead, there was concern. Resolve. Kate cowered, still hunched protectively over Lily, uncertain. She had heard all manner of stories from Douglas and Maud about savage Apache warriors. They had spun terrifying fables about men who raided ranches, tortured innocents. But James, her late husband, had once told her a different story of courage, friendship, and a debt once owed to an Apache by the name of Running Wolf. Her lips trembled, recalling James's words. He had spoken of a time he was lost in the desert, half dead from thirst, until a lone Apache warrior found him, shared water, and helped him survive. That warrior was called Running Wolf, a man who valued loyalty above all else. James had said that in some ways, the Apache saved his life. And that day, James pledged that if ever Running Wolf needed aid, James would stand by him. They parted ways, uncertain if fate would lead them together again. Now, it seemed fate had done just that. The figure towered in the doorway. With one swift motion, he withdrew his tomahawk and hacked through the heavy lock. Sparks flew. Kate gasped. In another moment, the door flung open entirely, and the cellar's stale air mixed with a fresh gust from the hallway above. The warrior crouched and peered into Kate's eyes. Although she shook with fear, something in his expression spoke of empathy. She saw him glance at Lily, so fragile, so weak in her arms, and his face softened. Without a word, he extended a calloused hand. "Are you Kate McAllister?" he asked, his voice rough and low, yet surprisingly gentle. His English carried an accent, but it was clear enough to understand. Kate swallowed. Every bone in her body wanted to scream, to run, to hide. But there was nowhere to go, and the calm in his voice quelled her panic. "Yes, I am," she managed, tears brimming in her eyes. "I am Running Wolf," he said. "I owed your husband a debt." His gaze flickered with sadness. "Now, I settle it." Carrying Lily cradled in one arm, Kate allowed Running Wolf to help her up the rickety cellar stairs. She expected to see the bodies of Douglas and Maud, or at least see them bound in ropes. Instead, she saw a battered hallway, a shattered door, and splinters strewn in all directions. Furniture lay overturned, and bullet holes pocked the walls. The air smelled of gunpowder, fear, and that acrid hint of burnt wood. Douglas and Maud were nowhere in sight. A horse's neigh outside broke the silence. Rain still hammered the roof, lightning flashing through the windows. Running Wolf pressed a finger to his lips, urging Kate to stay quiet. He led her along the corridor, scanning every corner, as if prepared for an ambush. Kate's stomach twisted at the idea that Douglas might leap from a hidden nook, revolver at the ready. She clutched Lily tighter, stepping gingerly around broken glass. Her eyes darted from one shadow to another. All she wanted was to flee this place, but Running Wolf's measured pace told her caution was necessary. They reached the living room. A large window had been smashed inward, letting in the deluge. Chairs were toppled, the remains of a whiskey bottle scattered across the rug. Kate pressed a hand to her mouth there. Leaning against a splintered table was Douglas McAllister. He was gasping for air, one arm pressed against a bleeding wound on his side. Rain lashed in from the open window, soaking him where he lay. His complexion was ashen, his eyes wide with pain. When he spotted Running Wolf, hatred flickered in his gaze. "You filthy savage!" Douglas spat, voice a ragged hiss. He coughed, wincing. "You'll pay for this." Kate trembled. She remembered all the cruelty inflicted upon her, yet her heart clenched at the sight of a man she had once tried to please, lying in his own blood. She glanced at Running Wolf, uncertain of what he might do. With grim composure, the Apache stepped forward. He knelt beside Douglas, taking in the man's wound. It looked bad, possibly a bullet graze, or a slice from the tomahawk. Douglas let out a strangled groan, trying to scramble away, but he lacked the strength. "Where's the woman?" Running Wolf asked, voice cold. Douglas clenched his jaw. "Maud is gone. She ran out the back," he growled, his tone laced with venom. Then, forcing a sneer, he added, "You'll never find her. And if you leave me here, I'll see the law hunt you down." Running Wolf's expression remained stony. He turned to Kate. "I came for you," he said softly. "If you wish him spared, I will see to it. But know this, he does not deserve mercy." Kate looked at Lily's pale face, at the trembling babe. She could still hear the child's faint whimpers, hunger gnawing at her tiny belly. Slowly, Kate shook her head. "He showed no mercy to me or my daughter," she whispered. She felt her voice shake, tears threatening to spill. "But I'm not like him. If he can survive, let him. If not, let fate decide. Running Wolf rose. He glanced down at Douglas, who glared back, pure loathing in his eyes. Without a word, the warrior strode across the room, retrieving a coil of rope that had been tossed aside during the struggle. With swift efficiency, he bound Douglas's hands and feet. Kate could tell by the jerkiness of Douglas's movements that every loop caused him pain. The older man groaned, cursing under his breath. But Running Wolf ignored him, tying him securely. When he finished, he straightened, turned to Kate, and gestured to the door. "Come," he said. "We must leave before the woman returns with more men. I have 2 horses waiting." 2 horses. That meant Running Wolf had come well prepared. Perhaps he had always known the McAllisters might be armed. The realization sent a wave of gratitude through Kate. Despite her terror, exhaustion, and sorrow, she found the strength to follow. Running Wolf scooped up Lily carefully, cradling the infant against his chest. Kate would have protested, but he held her child with such tenderness that she relented. Thunder shook the ranch house again. Time was of the essence. Together, they stepped out into the storm, the wind lashing at their faces. Rain drenched them instantly. In the muddy yard, Kate saw 2 sturdy horses. One was a wiry Mustang, the other a dark bay mare. Both looked anxious, shifting in the lightning flashes, but neither bolted. Running Wolf handed Lily back to Kate so he could mount the mare, then reached down, offering a strong arm. Kate grabbed hold, letting him pull her up behind him. She clung to him with Lily pressed between them, grateful that Lily was at least shielded from the worst of the storm. With a sharp whistle, Running Wolf coaxed the Mustang to follow. They galloped away from the ranch house, mud splattering beneath hooves, lightning zigzagging across the sky. Kate glanced over her shoulder one last time. It felt surreal to see the place vanish behind a curtain of rain, her prison for so many days, left behind in the night like a wretched dream. She wondered if Douglas would live or die, if Maud would ever be caught. She wondered if justice would be done. But for now, she focused on surviving, on keeping Lily safe. For the first time in weeks, fresh air filled her lungs, and she tasted freedom on the wind. Tears mixed with rain as she wept silently, clinging to Running Wolf's broad back. She didn't know where they were going, only that she was free. And that, after so much despair, a single spark of hope had been reignited in her heart. They rode through the storm for hours. The rolling thunder seemed to chase them across the plains, while jagged lightning illuminated the horizon. Running Wolf guided the horse with expert skill, weaving around flooded gullies and skirting the edges of shallow creeks now swollen with rain. Occasionally, he spoke a few words to reassure Kate, but mostly he concentrated on staying ahead of danger. Exhaustion clung to Kate, her eyelids heavy, her limbs trembling. Lily's small body remained pressed to her chest, still alarmingly limp, though she could feel her baby's shallow, even breaths. Every so often, Lily let out a tiny cry. It was enough to keep Kate alert, reminding her that Lily needed warmth, food life. At last, as dawn began to break over the drenched plains, Running Wolf pulled the horse to a halt beneath a cluster of cottonwoods. The wind had died down to a sullen moan, and the rain slowed to a drizzle. Dark clouds still clustered overhead, but a faint line of pink and gold touched the eastern sky. "We will rest here," Running Wolf said, dismounting fluidly. He reached up to help Kate down. Her legs nearly buckled the moment her feet touched the muddy ground. His strong arm steadied her. "We are safe for the moment. You must tend to your child." Kate nodded, teeth chattering. She clutched Lily closer, afraid the baby had caught a chill. As Running Wolf tied the horses, Kate found a spot under a large cottonwood, where the ground was relatively dry. She kneeled, ignoring her own discomfort, trying to soothe Lily. The baby opened her eyes, fussing weakly. Relief washed over Kate. Even a soft cry was better than none. Running Wolf approached with a bundle of supplies he'd carried in his saddlebag. From within, he produced a canteen of water, a small pouch of dried meat, and a bit of ground cornmeal in a cloth. He handed them to Kate. "Feed her," he said simply, his gaze flicking from Lily's face back to Kate's. "Then you must also eat. You are weak." Emotions welled up within Kate: gratitude, relief, and lingering fear that this was all too good to be true. She blinked tears from her eyes as she mouthed the thank you. With shaking hands, she managed to soak a bit of the ground cornmeal, making it soft enough for Lily. The baby's tiny mouth nursed on the watery paste. Kate's heart soared. Lily was alive, responding, fighting for life. Once Kate had fed Lily as best she could, she took a few gulps of water for herself and nibbled on the dried meat. Though tough, it tasted like salvation. Running Wolf hovered nearby, silently vigilant. She glanced at him, curiosity beginning to stir. "How did you know where to find me?" she asked softly. Once she felt strong enough to speak, he crouched near her, resting a hand on the wet earth. "Word spreads among my people," he replied. "A rumor reached me that James McAllister died, leaving behind a young wife and child. I heard also of the cruelty in the McAllister family, how they had ties to men in the territory who do vile deeds for money." He paused, a shadow crossing his face. "James once saved my life. He made me promise that should trouble ever befall him or his kin, I would repay that debt." Kate's throat tightened. James had mentioned an encounter with Running Wolf many times, but she had never imagined the warrior would actually come searching for them, especially after James's death. "He spoke of you," she said, voice trembling with emotion. "He told me you were an honorable man." Running Wolf lowered his gaze, his expression unreadable. "Your husband was brave, and he carried respect for the Apache. That is not common among your people." Silence settled between them, broken only by the dripping of water from the cottonwood leaves and the distant rumble of thunder. Kate swallowed back a well of grief. She wanted to ask 1,000 questions how James's final moments had been, if Running Wolf had heard any details of the accident, if there was a chance James still lived. But she knew the truth was absolute. James was gone. All she could do was hold on to his memory and survive for Lily. As if sensing her turmoil, Running Wolf spoke again. "We should move on once the horses rest," he said, nodding at the weary animals. "Maud may have gone for help. The ranch is not safe." "Where can we go?" Kate asked. She glanced around the endless plains. "There's nowhere." He placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "My people travel in these lands. The Mescalero. We have camps in the hills beyond the desert. If you wish to be truly safe from the McAllisters, you can come with me. They will not dare pursue you into our territory." His lips curved slightly, as though he found amusement at the thought of Douglas or Maud tracking them into the heart of Apache land. Kate hesitated. She had grown up on the edges of civilization, in small frontier towns. She knew well how most white settlers spoke about the tribes, always with distrust, hatred, or fear. But she also remembered James's stories, how he admired the Apache's code of honor, how Running Wolf had risked much to keep him alive. And now, Running Wolf was offering Kate and Lily a chance at life, at security. After what she had experienced, how could she not trust him? She drew a shuddering breath. "Yes," she said, pressing Lily closer. "Yes, I'll go with you. I have nowhere else to turn." Running Wolf gave a single nod. He rose to his feet, then extended a hand. "Rest a while longer. I will watch for riders." Kate looked up at him, tears threatening once again. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice thick. "For everything." Without another word, Running Wolf moved to the perimeter of the cottonwoods, scanning the rolling plains for any sign of pursuit. Kate settled onto the damp ground, trying to soothe Lily back to sleep. Outside, the dawn grew brighter, painting the sky a subdued pale gold. In that gentle light, Kate found a spark of hope. She thought of James, of how proud he would be to see Running Wolf fulfilling the vow he had made. She thought of Lily, sweet Lily, who might now live to see better days. While her heart still ached with the memory of imprisonment and the fear of what might come next, Kate felt a warmth bloom in her chest, a spark of renewed faith, there, under the dripping trees. She vowed to herself and to her daughter she would never again yield to despair. By the grace of an Apache warrior's courage, they would find a new beginning or die trying. 2 days later, the weather finally broke, giving way to a blazing sun that dried the plains to cracked earth. Kate and Running Wolf had ridden tirelessly through the open country, avoiding towns and main roads. They had camped under starlit skies, carefully rationing their meager supplies. In that time, Lily began to regain some strength. She still dozed frequently in Kate's arms, but her color looked better, and her cries were stronger, more insistent. Each time Lily let out a shrill wail, Kate nearly wept with relief. Her daughter was fighting to live. Running Wolf, for his part, was quiet and watchful. He seemed to know every trick for avoiding detection, how to travel upwind, how to spot dust clouds that signaled riders in the distance, how to find water sources where only dry desert seemed to stretch before them. Kate was in awe of his skill and thankful beyond words for his presence. Late on the second afternoon, they crossed a wide expanse of scrubland. Ragged yucca plants and clumps of sage peppered the rust-colored earth, which shimmered under the unrelenting sun. Kate felt the heat clawing at her skin, her throat parched. Even the horses seemed to droop with fatigue, but Running Wolf pressed on, leading them toward a low ridge that rose against the horizon. As they approached, she spotted movement figures on horseback, dark silhouettes cresting the ridge. Her pulse leapt with sudden fear. Were they enemies, bounty hunters? Then she saw Running Wolf lift a hand in a gesture. The figures responded in kind. Apache. Kate tried to steady her nerves. She had never before come so close to an Apache band. The fear she felt was not about Running Wolf or his people, but about stepping beyond everything she had once known. She feared the unknown. Yet she also sensed a stirring of excitement. Perhaps here, in these desert hills, she might find refuge. They rode up the slope, and the figures came into clearer view, men dressed in buckskin, feathers, and beaded vests. Some carried rifles, others bows. Their faces were stern, but Kate noticed they relaxed upon recognizing Running Wolf. A few nodded to him. One man stepped forward. He was older, with streaks of gray in his hair, and he wore a necklace of silver conchos. An air of authority surrounded him. He regarded Kate curiously, taking in the sight of the pale-faced woman and her infant. Running Wolf spoke to him in the Apache tongue, a swift, melodic language full of subtle intonations. Kate couldn't decipher the words, but she heard the respect in Running Wolf's voice. The elder answered with measured calm. Then he glanced at Kate once more, and though his face remained serious, she thought she detected no hostility in his gaze, merely caution. "This is our headman, Wolfclaw," Running Wolf explained to Kate in English, turning back to her. "He leads this group. I told him you are under my protection, and that you come in peace." Kate swallowed, her heart pounding. Cradling Lily, she tried to summon her courage. She could feel multiple eyes on her, studying, judging. Finally, She mustered a gentle nod. "Tell him I am grateful," she whispered. Running Wolf relayed her sentiment in Apache. Wolfclaw inclined his head, then motioned for them to follow. With that, the group rode deeper into the hills, winding through narrow passes and rocky outcroppings. Kate was amazed by the labyrinth of trails that opened up, trails she never would have recognized on her own. Running Wolf guided her, and the presence of these warriors made her feel oddly safe. Eventually, they entered a shallow valley surrounded by rugged cliffs. In the distance, smoke rose from several campfires. Hides and bright blankets hung from lines, and she could see women tending to cooking pots, children running around laughing, and a few men repairing weapons or caring for horses. It was a bustling Apache encampment, alive with daily routines, set against the stunning backdrop of the desert hills. As they rode in, curious eyes turned to them. Murmurs rippled through the crowd as they noticed the white woman holding a baby, riding behind Running Wolf. Kate kept her gaze low, unsure how to respond. She wondered if they resented her presence, if they feared she might bring trouble. Her heart pounded with each step the horse took. Running Wolf dismounted near a large fire pit. He helped Kate down. Lily squirmed, letting out a cry likely unsettled by the unfamiliar smells and sounds. At once, several older women approached, some frowning, others simply curious. One of them, tall and regal, wore a woven band in her braided hair. She carried an air of wisdom about her, as though she were accustomed to nurturing many within the camp. Running Wolf spoke a few swift words to her in Apache, pointing to Kate and Lily. The woman nodded, stepping closer. She gazed at Lily, who had begun fussing loudly. The woman's expression softened. Gently, she touched the baby's forehead, then pressed the back of her hand to Kate's cheek, as if measuring her temperature. She said something to Running Wolf, who nodded. "She will help you feed and care for your child," he explained to Kate. "Her name is Morning Star. She says you look ill and tired. You need rest. Food. Come." Kate opened her mouth to thank them, but emotion clogged her throat. A part of her couldn't believe that in a world so full of cruelty, like what she'd endured at the ranch, there could exist such compassion, extended to a stranger and her child. She blinked back tears, mustering a shaky smile. "Thank you," she managed. Morning Star gestured for Kate to follow, leading her toward a small brush shelter. Inside, it was surprisingly cool, with woven mats on the ground and buffalo hides draped around. Morning Star fetched a bowl of water, offering Kate a chance to drink and wash Lily's face. Other women gathered at the entrance, murmuring among themselves, but none pushed forward with hostility. If anything, Kate sensed curiosity, some measure of empathy. Running Wolf lingered in the doorway, ensuring Kate was comfortable. He spoke quietly with Morning Star, then turned to Kate. "I will speak to the elders in Wolfclaw. They must decide if you can remain here. For now, rest." She wanted to protest, she wanted to ask 100 questions, but exhaustion weighed heavily on her limbs. Lily's cries settled once Kate removed the baby's wet rags and swaddled her in a dry blanket offered by Morning Star. The older woman coaxed Kate to lie down on a soft pile of furs. As soon as Kate's head rested, her eyelids drooped. The last thing she saw was Running Wolf's tall figure stepping outside, leaving her with the women. Morning Star crouched nearby, humming a lullaby in a low, soothing tone. The song, foreign yet comforting, lulled Kate into a dreamless sleep. The next few days unfolded like a strange dream. Each morning, Kate woke to the smells of roasting corn or stewing meat wafting through the encampment. Children's laughter echoed among the brush huts, and horses snorted softly as men brought them to water. It was a world entirely different from the damp cellar where she had nearly perished. Morningstar took Kate under her wing, teaching her small tasks: how to grind corn, where to find the sweet fruits that grew along the rocky ledges, which herbs helped settle a baby's stomach. Lily, though still weak, gradually regained color in her cheeks, and her appetite improved. Kate found herself surrounded by a quiet wave of communal care. Women stopped by to coo at Lily, offering small tokens or bits of food. Men, though more reserved, would nod to her in passing, acknowledging her presence without hostility. Running Wolf was often away with the hunters, scouting or gathering. She rarely saw him for more than a few minutes at dawn or dusk. When she did, he would inquire about her well-being, check on Lily, and provide updates. The elders, he said, were divided on what to do with her. Some felt that sheltering a white woman, especially one connected to the McAllisters, would invite retribution from local ranchers or the army. Others argued that refusing her would violate the code of honor that had saved James McAllister's life and, in turn, bound Running Wolf to protect his kin. In the end, Wolfclaw declared that Kate and Lily might stay, so long as they contributed to the camp's welfare, and so long as she and Running Wolf maintained strict vigilance for any sign of trouble. She had no illusions that all accepted her wholeheartedly. She saw the wary glances, heard the whispered conversations. But for the moment, she was safe, far safer than she had been in that cellar. Yet beneath the surface of this newfound security, Kate felt an undercurrent of tension. She sensed Running Wolf's watchfulness, the way he would scan the horizon at sunset. She overheard talk among the men about long knives, the army scouts, and the possibility of conflict. And she couldn't forget her in-laws. Maud had escaped that night. If she had the resources, she would certainly want revenge on Kate for humiliating their family. The question was, how far would she go? One afternoon, while Kate helped Morningstar sort herbs, she spotted movement at the edge of camp. A lone rider approached, and Running Wolf and several other warriors went out to greet him. Kate couldn't discern the rider's face from a distance, but she noticed the tense posture among the welcoming party. It wasn't until the rider dismounted, spoke at length with Wolfclaw, and pointed in various directions that the group of Apache men turned serious, some muttering angrily. Running Wolf broke away, heading straight toward Kate. She rose from her seat, heart pounding. Lily dozed nearby on a blanket. "What's happening?" Kate asked, voice tight with concern. He exhaled, his expression grim. The rider came from a friendly camp to the west. He brought word that a group of white men ranchers, maybe vigilantes, have been traveling through the region, asking questions. They threaten that anyone who harbors a certain white woman and her baby will face swift punishment. They've described you. Kate's knees nearly buckled. Maud, or Douglas, or both, she whispered. They're hunting me down. Running Wolf's jaw tightened. Yes, word is, these men are offering rewards for information. They say you kidnapped your child, that you're unstable, dangerous. Outrage flared in Kate's chest. That's a lie. They kept me prisoner, I know, Running Wolf replied firmly. And those here who have seen, you know as well. But not everyone in the territory is honest or kind. If they think they can earn a reward by selling you out, they might do so. Kate's eyes burned with tears of frustration and fear. What do we do? Running Wolf paused, glancing at Lily. We stay vigilant. The elders will decide if we should move camp or stand our ground. For now, remain inside the shelter with your child. If any strangers enter camp, do not show yourself. We will protect you. She stared at him, heart hammering. Though she had grown to trust him, the idea of once again being hunted made her feel sick. I can't keep running forever, she murmured, voice trembling. Lily can't survive if we never stop looking over our shoulders. Running Wolf's gaze softened. You will not run forever, Kate. I promise you. 2 days later, a hush fell over the camp as word spread that white men had been spotted riding the far side of the ridge. There were 6 riders in total. Kate stayed inside her shelter, clutching Lily. Listening to the camp's sudden flurry of activity, children rushed inside tents. The older men checked their weapons, and Wolfclaw directed the women to gather supplies in case they had to flee. Running Wolf slipped into the shelter. They are coming, he said quietly. We do not know if they are the same men who seek you, but it's likely. Wolfclaw wants to meet them on neutral ground, away from the huts, so the women and children remain safe. Kate's pulse raced. You can't let them see me. They'll twist everything, claim I'm some fugitive. They might bring the army down on the entire camp. Running Wolf nodded. I know. Stay hidden. Morning Star will remain with you. If anything happens, if Wolfclaw signals the alarm, you must flee with Morning Star and the others. Head for the hills. I will do what I can to keep them away from you. Her heart clenched with both terror and guilt. She did not want these people who had shown her kindness to suffer because of her. She clutched Running Wolf's arm. Please, don't. Let anyone get hurt on my account. His dark eyes held a fierce light. We do what we must to protect our own. You are under my protection. Kate, remember that. With those words, he ducked out of the shelter. Kate cradled Lily to her chest, listening as the men saddled their horses. In the tense silence that followed, she felt a surge of conflicting emotions, gratitude for Running Wolf, fear for the camp, and a stubborn determination not to be a victim again. Time passed slowly. She heard only the whisper of the wind, the murmured prayers of Morning Star, who sat nearby, eyes closed in concentration. Lily whimpered once, but Kate managed to calm her with a gentle sway. Then, distant shouts and the snort of horses. Kate tensed, every muscle coiled. She couldn't help but creep to the shelter's opening, peering out. The camp was empty, except for a few women, and the very old or very young, all hidden behind huts and rocks, staying low. Farther off, at the ridge's crest, she saw Running Wolf and Wolfclaw waiting, rifles in hand, but held at rest. Approaching them were 6 riders, armed to the teeth. Though she couldn't hear their conversation, she watched as the group halted several yards away. One man, presumably the leader, barked something, jabbing a finger in the direction of the Apache. Wolfclaw responded in an even tone, making no threatening moves. A moment later, the man reined his horse forward. She could see him more clearly now, middle-aged, mustached, wearing a battered hat and a dusty duster. He carried a pistol at his hip, his stance full of aggression. He shouted again, pointing. Running Wolf stood firm. The man grew angrier, brandishing his revolver. Kate's stomach knotted. She willed them not to escalate into violence. Her worst fear was a massacre on either side. But then, she saw Running Wolf speak calmly. Stepping closer, the man swung his revolver in Running Wolf's direction. Tension crackled in the hot desert air. Suddenly, Wolfclaw barked an order, and a pair of Apache warriors moved to flank the men. Rifles were raised. The intruders seemed taken aback, though not cowed. Kate watched in growing dread. Certain bullets would soon fly. She clenched Lily's blanket, ready to turn and flee if chaos erupted. Then, to her astonishment, the mustached man spat on the ground, holstered his pistol, and turned his horse around. He yelled something at his companions, and they followed him, glaring at the Apache. In a flurry of dust, the riders trotted away. Wolfclaw and Running Wolf watched them go, rifles still leveled. until they were well beyond the ridge. Relief washed over Kate, so potent that it almost made her faint. Morning Star whispered a prayer of thanks. The entire camp seemed to let out a collective exhale. Running Wolf and the others returned, expressions guarded, but with no sign of immediate pursuit. Kate carefully slipped outside, Lily in her arms. As Running Wolf dismounted, she rushed to him, her breath shaky. "Are you all right?" she asked. He nodded, though tension still radiated through him. They claimed to be looking for stolen horses, wanted to search the camp. Wolfclaw refused, said they had no right. They threatened to return with soldiers. He paused. But for now, they're gone. Kate's heart sank. They won't just give up. Running Wolf's brow furrowed. No, they will not. In the days that followed, the Apache camp remained on high alert. Scouts patrolled the perimeter, ready to sound the alarm if the riders returned. Women packed essentials, preparing to move at a moment's notice. Tension gnawed at Kate. She helped as best she could, gathering firewood, fetching water, and mending clothing. She wanted to prove that she was more than a burden, that she respected their way of life. Late one evening, after Kate had finally settled Lily to sleep, she stepped out into the moonlit camp, seeking a breath of fresh air. She found Running Wolf perched on a rock at the edge of the clearing, staring out at the vast desert. Moonlight glinted off his hair, the same color as raven feathers. Quietly, she approached. "May I sit?" she asked, though she already began lowering herself to the ground beside him. He inclined his head. They sat in a comfortable silence for a few moments, the desert wind sighing across the arid landscape. Crickets chirped softly, and in the distance, a lone coyote howled. "Thank you for everything," Kate finally said, breaking the hush. "I know I've said it before, but I mean it. You saved my life and Lily's. You didn't have to." He rested his hands on his knees, gazing out at the night sky. "James saved my life once, without asking for anything in return. Honor demanded I do the same for his family." She studied his profile, the strong line of his jaw, the intensity in his eyes. "You risked your people's safety too," she murmured. "This is more than just a simple debt." He looked at her, his gaze steady. "For us, a debt of life is sacred. And besides, I do not regret helping you or Lily. You are strong, despite what you have endured." Kate felt a flush of warmth spread through her cheeks. No one had called her strong in so long. She swallowed, trying to steady her emotions. "I want to be, but sometimes I'm so afraid." Running Wolf nodded. "Fear is natural. Courage is acting despite fear. You have done that. You survived." His words settled over her, a gentle affirmation. A tear slipped down her cheek. "If James were here," she whispered, "he'd be so grateful." Running Wolf's expression softened. "I wish he were here too. He was a good man." They shared a moment of silence, lost in memories. Then Kate drew a shaky breath. "I'm sorry your people have to face trouble on my account. I wish I could end this without—" He lifted a hand, silencing her. "It is not only because of you that we face trouble. The ranchers and the army have long sought to push us off these lands. If it was not you, it would be something else. The conflict was brewing. Your presence simply brought it sooner." His honesty cut through her guilt. She realized how complicated the situation truly was. She stared at the moonlit horizon. What will happen next? He let out a soft sigh. "I do not know. Wolfclaw is talking of moving camp deeper into the mountains, but we have elderly and young children. It's a difficult journey. Others say we should stay and defend our home." He glanced at her. "And you, do you wish to stay among us?" The question hung in the cool night air. Kate considered it. Part of her yearned for the quiet life of a small homestead, to raise Lily in peace, to start over. But she had no money, no land, no allies outside of this camp, and she had grown to care for these people, who had shown her kindness when no one else would. She inhaled slowly, feeling the hush of the night settle over her. "Yes," she said at last. "If your people will have me, I want to stay." She blinked, tears forming again. "I owe it to Lily to give her a safe home, and until it's safe to leave, or until I can find a life beyond these hills, I'd rather be here, with you." Running Wolf nodded, his expression unreadable in the moonlight. "Then we will see what tomorrow brings," he said quietly. Morning dawned bright and scorching. The sun already high as the camp stirred. Children ran errands. Men sharpened arrowheads. Women tended cooking fires. Kate was wiping Lily's face with a damp cloth when a sudden cry shattered the calm. She jumped, heart racing. Immediately, the camp buzzed with alarm. Men grabbed their rifles. Women scooped up children. Kate caught sight of Morning Star rushing past her shelter, calling out in alarm. "Riders!" came the shout from a lookout perched on a rocky outcrop. "They're armed!" Kate's blood ran cold. She seized Lily, wrapped her firmly in a sling across her chest, and scrambled outside. Over the plain, she spotted dust clouds, a half-dozen men on horseback, maybe more, galloping straight for the camp. Running Wolf and several Apache warriors quickly mounted up, Wolfclaw at the lead, forming a defensive line. The entire camp braced. Kate recognized a figure at the head of the intruders, Maud McAllister. Even from a distance, Kate could see the older woman's stern face, her gray hair flying wild, her posture rigid with rage. Beside her rode two men brandishing rifles, likely hired guns. There were at least 5 others, including a tall man with a wide-brimmed hat. He wore a self-satisfied smirk. The group halted just outside rifle range, and Maud shouted, "We're here for that woman and her child. Hand her over, and no one gets hurt." Wolfclaw shouted something back in Apache. Running Wolf turned in his saddle and yelled in English, "You have no right to demand anything. Turn back now." Maud's face contorted. "That woman is a criminal. She murdered my husband and left Douglas for dead." She brandished a piece of paper, presumably some twisted warrant. "We have the law on our side. If you don't give her up, we'll bring soldiers. You filthy savages will hang for kidnapping a white woman." Anger flared in Kate's chest. She nearly choked on the audacity of Maud's lies. Running Wolf didn't budge. He raised his rifle, aiming it at the riders. The other Apache warriors followed suit. Tension crackled in the hot air, thick enough to taste. At a signal from Maud, the hired guns advanced. They were clearly itching for a fight. Wolfclaw barked an order, and the Apache men fanned out, forming a crescent around the intruders. A single spark could ignite a bloodbath. Kate's stomach twisted. This was exactly the conflict she had feared would befall the camp. She clutched Lily closer, her mind racing. If the camp was overrun, all these people who had sheltered her Morning Star, Wolfclaw, Running Wolf would suffer. She had to do something. Without warning, a single shot rang out. One of Maud's henchmen had fired into the air, whether as a provocation or a threat. Kate couldn't tell, but the effect was immediate. The Apache warriors tensed, rifles at the ready. The intruders shouted, spurring their horses closer. That was when Kate did the unthinkable. Heart pounding, she rushed forward, stepping out from behind the nearest hut. She held Lily close, her arms protectively around the baby, and raised her free hand in a desperate plea. "Stop!" she screamed. "Stop, please! I'm here!" She heard Running Wolf shout her name, warning her to stay back. She saw Wolfclaw glare in disbelief, but she kept going. her legs shaking, tears streaming down her face. If she could just talk to Maud, perhaps she could prevent a massacre. She couldn't let these people die for her. She walked past the line of Apache warriors, who stared, uncertain. She reached a gap in their formation, stepping out onto the open ground between the two opposing sides. The sun beat down mercilessly. Her voice wavered, loud enough for them to hear. Maud McAllister, I am here. Let these people go, and I will come to you willingly. Her heart thundered. But she forced herself to stand tall. The riders slowed. Maud's eyes lit up with triumph, a cruel smile twisting her features. You finally show yourself, you wretched girl, Maud spat. You have no idea the trouble you've caused. Kate could feel Running Wolf's gaze boring into her back. She knew he must be furious, frightened for her safety. But she pressed on. You lied, she said, her voice strong despite her trembling. I never murdered anyone. You locked me in that cellar to die. You starved my baby. Maud sneered, raising her revolver. That's a lie. You're an ungrateful heathen. Douglas was too soft to kill you, but I won't make that mistake. Hand over that child, or I'll burn this camp to the ground. Fury erupted in Kate's chest. She'd endured so much starvation, despair, humiliation. But this threat to Lily ignited a primal rage she never knew she possessed. No, Kate hissed, hugging Lily protectively. You will not take her. With that defiance, chaos erupted. One of Maud's henchmen fired a shot toward the Apache line. Wolfclaw shouted an order, and the warriors returned fire. Horses screamed. Rearing up, dust swirled. Maud's men scattered, discharging their rifles wildly. Kate dropped to the ground, shielding Lily with her body. Bullets whizzed overhead. She saw one of Maud's men topple from his horse, while another took off at a gallop, fleeing the hail of gunfire. The confusion was absolute. Some of the hired guns managed to rally, forming a half-circle to provide covering fire for Maud. The Apache warriors expertly maneuvered, picking targets, ducking behind rocks. Kate lay prone in the dirt, petrified, hearing Lily wail. In the swirl of dust and screams, she felt a strong hand grip her arm, hauling her up. She cried out, thinking an enemy had her, but it was Running Wolf. He pulled her upright, eyes blazing. Get back! He roared above the din. You'll be killed! She clung to him, stumbling as he led her behind a rocky outcrop. Maud was dismounted now, screeching orders, her hair wild, revolver smoking. The Apache bullets forced her to keep her head down, but she kept shouting, Seize the woman! Kill the rest! Running Wolf grimaced. Stay here, he commanded Kate, pushing her into a sheltered nook. Protect Lily. Then, with a determined glare, he strode back into the fight. Kate's heart hammered. She wanted to scream for him to stay safe. She watched him sprint across the battlefield, weaving expertly as bullets kicked up dust around him. He closed in on Maud, who was reloading with shaking hands. Another of her men tried to intercept Running Wolf, only to be dropped by a swift arrow from one of the Apache archers. In seconds, Running Wolf was upon Maud. He knocked the revolver from her grasp with a swift strike, sending it clattering into the dirt. With cold fury in his eyes, he brandished his tomahawk. Maud stumbled back, snarling curses. She tried to reach for a hidden knife, but Running Wolf was faster. He caught her arm, twisted it behind her back, and slammed her to the ground. Kate trembled in her hiding spot, watching it all unfold. The sudden crack of the final gunshot echoed, and then silence fell. She saw Wolfclaw and several warriors in the distance, scanning for more threats. Two of Maud's men still lay on the ground, unmoving. Another crawled, wounded, moaning for mercy. The others had fled. It was over. In the hush that followed, Running Wolf pressed Maud face first into the dirt, pinning her arms. She fought like a wildcat, spitting, shrieking, her hair plastered across her face. But the Apache warrior held firm. Kate stumbled forward, Lily still in her arms. She could barely believe it was over, that the camp still stood, that no more bloodshed was unfolding. Maud's eyes blazed with hate as Kate approached. "You'll pay," she snarled, voice hoarse. "There are more men where these came from. The army." Kate swallowed hard, tears burning her eyes. She looked to Running Wolf, who hovered, breathing heavily. She saw the rage in his eyes, the fury born of seeing his people threatened in their own home. A single flick of his tomahawk could end Maud's life. In that moment, Kate remembered the pain, the humiliation of the cellar. She almost wanted to see justice dealt swiftly, punishing Maud for her cruelty. Yet another part of her recoiled from the idea of murder, even of someone who had shown her no mercy. Her voice quivered as she finally spoke. "Running Wolf, no more blood," she pleaded. He looked at her, breathing labored. The tomahawk raised slightly. For a moment, she thought he might ignore her. Then he exhaled, lowering the weapon. "She is yours to judge," he said quietly, stepping back. Maud lay panting in the dirt, fury radiating from her. "Go on," she hissed at Kate. "Do it. Prove how savage you all are." Kate's entire body trembled. She glanced at Lily, who had calmed to quiet whimpers, tears streaking her little face. Turning back to Maud, Kate spoke, her voice soft yet steady. "You wanted to see me die in the cellar. You wanted Lily to starve. You shot at us, threatened these innocent people. But I won't be like you." She made a decision then. "We'll take you to town, turn you over to the law, let them judge. If there's any real justice, they'll see the truth." In her heart, she knew the system might be corrupt, might fail, but she refused to let Lily see her mother become an executioner. She refused to let bitterness define her path forward. Maud stared at her, chest heaving with hate and disbelief. "You fool!" she spat. "They'll never believe your story." Kate stared back. "I know the truth. That's enough." Wounded men were tended. The dead were laid out. Among the Apache, 3 had minor injuries, none fatal. Among Maud's group, 2 men had perished. Another died of his wounds, and the rest fled. As the sun climbed overhead, scorching the battlefield, Wolf Claw and the other elders spoke gravely about what to do next. Ultimately, they agreed. With the ranchers and the threat of soldiers looming, the camp must relocate to safer territory in the mountains. But first, Kate would take Maud into town, accompanied by Running Wolf and a small band of warriors, to turn her over to the authorities if they would accept custody. Kate felt a swirl of fear and determination. She had not seen the town in weeks, not since before James's death. Would the sheriff believe her? Would he brand the Apache as savages and arrest them instead? She didn't know. But for Lily's future, for the future of these people, she had to try. They bound Maud securely, loading her onto a horse, ignoring her venomous threats. Then Kate, Lily, Running Wolf, Wolf Claw, and 2 other warriors departed. They journeyed across the plains, silent and watchful. Maud scowled from atop her horse, her wrists tied. She hurled occasional insults, but Kate tuned them out, focusing on Lily's presence against her chest. She remembered the vow she made in the darkness of the cellar to protect her child and never again yield to despair. They rode into the dusty town just before sunset. It was a small settlement with one main street, an old saloon, a general store, a few cabins, and a wooden jailhouse near the end of the row. Townsfolk peered from windows and porches as they saw the group arrive. many alarmed by the sight of armed Apache warriors. The sheriff, a stout man with a drooping mustache, stepped onto the boardwalk outside the jail, hand hovering near his holster. "What's going on here?" he demanded. Kate took a breath, urging her horse forward. "Sheriff, it's me, Kate McAllister. I've come to press charges against Maud McAllister. She imprisoned me, tried to kill me and my child, led a group of hired gunmen in an attack on the Apache camp." The sheriff blinked, clearly startled. He eyed Maud, who glared daggers at Kate. "That's a serious accusation, young lady," the sheriff muttered. "Maud, is this true?" Maud spat on the ground. "She's a lying piece of trash. Always has been. She killed my son and robbed our ranch. She's a kidnapper." And these savages, Running Wolf stiffened at the slur, but he held his tongue. Kate explained everything, voice trembling as she recounted her weeks in the cellar, the cruelty, the attempted murder. Onlookers gathered, whispering. Some seemed suspicious of Kate's story, others shocked at the idea of such brutality. Finally, the sheriff raised a hand. "That's enough. Let's go inside. We'll sort this out." With that, he demanded that Maud be placed in a cell, while Kate told her tale in more detail. Maud screamed that the Apache were criminals, that the sheriff should arrest them all. But the sheriff, to his credit, maintained order. He locked Maud in a cell, then turned to Kate and Running Wolf. "All right," he said, tugging at his mustache. "I can't just take your word alone, but I'll send out a deputy to the ranch. Check the cellar you spoke of. If it's as you say, we'll have the circuit judge come through next week to hold a hearing. Meanwhile, Maud stays behind bars." Kate felt relief wash through her, though she also knew it wasn't over. "Thank you, Sheriff," she said quietly. "That's all I ask." He eyed Running Wolf and the warriors warily. "And what about you folks? You best not linger in town too long. Some folks might not take kindly to Apache strolling around, especially in these times." Running Wolf nodded, his expression a mask. "We will leave, but if you fail to deliver justice, we will return." Kate's heart squeezed at the promise in his tone. The sheriff blinked uneasily. Understood. Outside, the sun had nearly set, painting the sky with streaks of pink and orange. Wolfclaw exchanged words with Running Wolf, then rode out of town with the others, leaving Kate and Running Wolf behind. She glanced at him in confusion. "Where are they going?" "They'll scout the outskirts. Make sure it's safe," he said. "We should find a place to stay the night. Tomorrow, if the deputy confirms your story, we can decide our next step." Kate nodded, though her stomach churned. Exhaustion clung to her bones. She had no money, no belongings, just the clothes on her back. The saloon was not a family-friendly place, and the only boarding house might not welcome her with an Apache companion. In the end, they went to the small boarding house on the edge of town. Kate approached the owner, a stiff-lipped woman named Mrs. Peters. She explained they needed a room for one night, that Running Wolf would keep watch outside to protect them. Mrs. Peters, eyeing Running Wolf's attire and weaponry, hesitated, but the presence of Lily, an innocent child in Kate's arms, swayed her. She grudgingly offered a tiny attic room. Running Wolf insisted on sleeping in the stables with the horses, promising to stand guard through the night. Before parting, Kate placed a trembling hand on his arm. "I don't have the words to thank you enough," she whispered. His gaze was gentle. "Do not thank me yet. Let us see what tomorrow brings." Sunlight filtered through the attic window at dawn, stirring Kate from a restless sleep. Lily squirmed, mewling softly. Kate soothed her, reflecting on all that had happened. By noon, The sheriff's deputy would return from the McAllister ranch with evidence that Kate's story was true. If the cellar still bore signs of her imprisonment, if Douglas was there to confirm anything. Kate felt a swirl of hope and dread. She made her way downstairs, baby in tow, and stepped outside to find Running Wolf. He stood by the stable, talking quietly with Wolf Claw, who had returned at some point in the night. Wolf Claw nodded to her, then gestured that they would be around if she needed them. Kate thanked him softly. She still felt amazement at the alliance formed between them. As noon approached, townsfolk gathered in the dusty street, curious to see the outcome. The sheriff emerged from the jail, arms folded, while Maud remained locked in a cell, cursing at anyone who passed. Tension simmered in the heat. Finally, the deputy rode in, looking grim. He dismounted, spoke to the sheriff in hushed tones. Kate waited, heart pounding, while Running Wolf stayed at her side. Then the sheriff cleared his throat and shouted for silence, addressing the townsfolk who had gathered. "It seems there's some truth to Miss Kate McAllister's claims," the sheriff announced. "We found the cellar locked from the outside, with signs that it was used to confine someone. Douglas McAllister is alive, but he's in bad shape, claiming he was attacked by Indians." The sheriff glanced uncertainly at Running Wolf. "He says he tried to stop his wife from harming Kate, but I ain't sure that's entirely accurate." Kate's jaw clenched at Douglas's half-truth. She knew he had done nothing to save her, but at least it exposed Maud's lies. Regardless, the sheriff continued, "We'll hold Maud McAllister until the circuit judge arrives. Then we'll have a proper hearing. For now, Miss Kate McAllister, you're free to go about your business. I suggest you stay in the area so we can call on you as a witness." A mixture of relief and anxiety coursed through Kate. She glanced at Running Wolf, who gave a subtle nod. The crowd muttered. Some cast suspicious looks at Running Wolf and Wolf Claw. Others expressed sympathy for Kate. Slowly, the crowd dispersed. It was over, or at least, the immediate threat was contained. Kate felt tears well up, a swirl of emotions raging in her heart. She wanted to cry out in joy, in grief, in sheer exhaustion. Running Wolf rested a hand on her shoulder, anchoring her. That evening, as the sun dipped behind the western horizon, Kate found herself sitting on the edge of the stable, Lily in her arms. Wolf Claw had decided to ride back to the camp to oversee the relocation. Running Wolf would remain a little longer, ensuring Kate was safe. The question now was, what would become of her and Lily? She turned to Running Wolf, who leaned against a post, arms folded. "Will your people move on without you?" she asked quietly. He nodded. "They will go north, deeper into the mountains, away from the ranchers. Wolf Claw says the spirits will guide us to a safer land. Many will not return here." She swallowed hard, sadness prickling her eyes. "That means we might never see them again." He looked away, gazing out at the darkening street. "Perhaps not," he admitted, "but it is safer that way. You do not belong in the middle of our battles." Kate's heart thumped. She realized that, although it had only been a short time, she felt a bond with these people. She had begun to learn their ways, to appreciate their sense of community, to find acceptance. And with Running Wolf, she felt a strange kind of kinship, one forged in shared danger and mutual respect. She summoned her courage. "What if I wanted to go with you?" she asked, voice trembling. "What if Lily and I joined your people in the mountains?" Running Wolf turned, surprised. She saw a flicker of emotion in his eyes. Was it hope or concern? "You would leave the town?" he asked. She laughed softly, a sound laced with bitterness. "What town? I have no home here. The ranch is gone. The land belongs to my in-laws. They tried to kill me. Even if Douglas recovers, He'll never welcome me back. And I have no wish to return. I have no other family, no money, no place to go. At least among the Apache, I've found kindness." He hesitated, brow furrowed. "My people live a hard life. The mountains can be unforgiving. We roam from place to place. Winter is brutal, and many still do not trust outsiders. You would face suspicion, perhaps hostility." She looked down at Lily, who yawned, tiny fists curling against Kate's chest. "I'd rather face that than put my daughter in another situation like the cellar. You gave us a second chance. I want Lily to grow up in a place where kindness outweighs hatred." For a moment, Running Wolf said nothing, his gaze drifting to Lily. Gently, he reached out, brushing the baby's hair with his fingertips. It was a gesture of surprising tenderness, melting Kate's heart. Finally, he spoke, voice low. "Then come with me. I will speak to the elders, to Wolfclaw. They will listen, for James's sake and for mine." Kate felt a wave of profound relief, and she nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks. She didn't know what the future held, but she believed in the quiet strength of Running Wolf's promise. 2 weeks later, Kate and Running Wolf rode side by side into the high country. A great migration of the Apache camp had taken place, and they found them nestled in a hidden valley where pines towered tall and streams ran clear. The air was cooler, the nights cold enough that Kate bundled Lily in thick hides each evening. Though some among the Apache still eyed her warily, most had come to accept her presence. She worked alongside the women, learning to tan hides, gather wild berries, and prepare traditional meals. Lily thrived in the fresh mountain air, her cheeks rosy, her cries strong and healthy. Morning Star greeted them warmly, relief evident in her eyes to see Kate and Lily safe. Wolfclaw offered a measured nod of approval when Running Wolf presented Kate's request to remain with the tribe. After a long discussion among the elders, they agreed. Kate would be welcomed as a member, so long as she respected the Apache ways and contributed to the camp's survival. At night, as the stars blazed overhead with a brilliance she had never known, Kate would cradle Lily and feel a deep sense of belonging. Yes, she was an outsider by blood, but the Apache recognized her heart. She had proven her courage, her devotion to her child, and her readiness to protect and be protected by this community. In a quiet clearing near the edge of the valley, Running Wolf built a small lodge. It was modest skins stretched over a wooden frame, furs lining the interior, but it was more of a home than Kate had ever thought she'd see again. Here, in the hush of the mountains, she felt James's spirit at peace. She even found herself talking to Lily about her father, recalling the kind man who once sowed seeds of friendship with an Apache warrior. Sometimes, in the glow of the campfire, Running Wolf would tell stories of his people's ancestors, tales of heroes who battled giant beasts, of cunning tricksters who taught valuable lessons, of the wind and the sun as living spirits. Kate listened, enthralled, feeling her horizons expand beyond anything she had known in the confines of a ranch house or a small frontier town. And though her heart still carried Scar's nightmares of the cellar, the rancid smell of that dark prison, the terror in Lily's weak cries, she found healing in the daily rhythms of tribal life. She discovered a strength inside her she never knew existed. She discovered that forgiveness, while difficult, was the key to her own freedom from the past. Eventually, word reached them through scattered travelers that Maud McAllister had faced trial. The judge deemed her guilty of unlawful imprisonment and attempted murder. Douglas, battered and disgraced, tried to shift blame, but in the end, the verdict stood. Maud would live out her days in prison. Douglas lost the ranch to debt, and rumor had it he fled the territory in shame. When Kate heard the news, she felt a profound sense of closure. The ghosts of the cellar no longer held power over her. Lily would grow up, knowing not only the hardships of frontier life, but the resilience and beauty of the Apache. She would walk on land that carried the memory of her father's friend, Running Wolf, who honored a debt that transcended hatred. Years passed, and the clan moved from one region to the next, always following the seasons and the herds. Kate's hair grew long and sun-kissed, her once pale skin bronzed by the desert sun and the mountain winds. She learned enough of the Apache language to converse with friends, to sing lullabies to Lily in the camp's melodic tongue. Lily, meanwhile, took to the ways of the tribe with an ease that warmed Kate's heart, running barefoot among the pine needles, braiding her dark hair with colorful beads, laughing with other children around the fire. Running Wolf became not just a protector, but a companion, a confidant. There was a gentle intimacy that grew between him and Kate, unspoken for a while, forged in trust and mutual respect. Over time, that bond deepened into something neither had planned nor resisted. A quiet love, born of shared trials and hopes, blossomed under the vast western skies. Standing on a ridge at sunrise, Kate often gazed at the horizon, recalling the day Running Wolf had shattered the cellar door. In that single act, he had saved more than her life. He had saved her belief in humanity, her faith in hope. He had proven that compassion could transcend the boundaries of race and history, that an Apache warrior could become the very embodiment of bravery, kindness, and loyalty. And so, in the end, it was not hatred or violence that shaped the course of Kate's life, but the unwavering courage of a man bound by honor and her own resolve to protect her child at all costs. Together, they charted a path filled with uncertainty and challenges, but also with the promise of freedom and the kind of family forged by shared devotion. They would never forget the cruelty inflicted upon them, but neither would they be imprisoned by bitterness. In the wide open spaces of the West, under the burning sun and shimmering stars, they found that redemption was possible, that love could overcome fear. And when Lily learned to speak her first words in Apache, Kate felt a surge of pride and gratitude that no darkness could ever quench. For in this wild land where storms raged, where prejudice still lurked in many hearts, and where the call of the coyote echoed under the moon, there existed a place of refuge, a pocket of acceptance, where a young mother and her child were given a chance to start anew. All because one Apache warrior named Running Wolf shattered the chains of a cellar door and, in doing so, reminded the world that compassion is a powerful force, strong enough to break any lock forged by hatred. It was a story Kate would tell Lily again and again, as the child grew from infant to girl to woman, a story of how a mother and baby found themselves imprisoned by cruel fate, and how a single act of courage, driven by a debt of gratitude, changed their destiny forever. A story of how the savage cruelty of men could be undone by the nobility of a warrior's heart. And in the telling of that tale, Kate ensured that the memory of James McAllister, the bond with Running Wolf, and the resilience of the Apache would burn brightly through every sunset and sunrise across the vast Wild West frontier, carrying forward a message that still resonates in the hush of the desert wind. Hope can spring from the darkest cellar, and compassion can triumph where hatred has roamed for too long.